all been there, haven't we? Stuck with a book that feels like it was written by someone who just discovered a thesaurus.
Oh, absolutely. And they're contractually obligated to use every single word.
Right. But wouldn't it be amazing if there was a way to not just survive bad writing, but to actually understand why it fails? And maybe even learn from those mistakes ourselves? Well, that's what we're diving into today.
I like it.
We're dissecting a source called Examples of Really Bad Writing from academichelp.net.
Okay.
And get this, they use actual examples of truly cringeworthy prose to show us what not to do.
It's kind of like learning to cook by watching like a disaster show in the kitchen.
Oh.
You see all the ways things can go wrong, so hopefully you don't end up burning the place down.
Exactly. And trust me, some of these writing examples are the literary equivalent of a 5-alarm grease fire.
Oh, no.
For example, there's this one gem, right, that describes a simple walk in the park.
Okay, yeah.
It uses enough adjectives to make a dictionary blush.
Wow.
It's almost impressive how awful it is.
I can imagine. Well, what I find fascinating about this approach is that by analyzing these train wrecks of sentences,
Okay.
we can start to identify the common threads that make them so painful to read. Things like overusing adjectives,
Yes.
creating sentences that never seem to end, and just trying so hard to sound intellectual that the actual meaning gets lost.
Right, you're just completely lost in this fog of unnecessary complexity.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where this deep dive gets really interesting for all of us word nerds out there.
Okay.
The source goes beyond just showcasing bad writing.
Right.
It digs into the common mistakes that even decent writers make. And most importantly, it offers strategies to, avoid them.
And I think understanding those common pitfalls is crucial for anyone who wants to improve their writing or even just appreciate the craft of putting words together effectively.
Absolutely. So let's jump into the trenches, shall we? And I'm not using trenches lightly here. The first pitfall the source tackles is the dreaded info dump.
Ugh, yes, the info dump.
Where the writer just unloads a backstory as exciting as a tax audit,
Right.
all in one massive paragraph. Like, hold on, I barely know these characters, and you're already giving me their great aunt's recipe for pickled beets.
Exactly. Info dumping is such a classic mistake because I think a lot of writers, they feel this need to, get the reader up to speed on every single detail right away.
Right, right.
But what they don't realize is that, strategically revealing information can be so much more engaging.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. Suspense, intrigue, they're built on this foundation of curiosity.
Okay.
So by doling out those pieces of information slowly, you're actually inviting the reader to become, an active participant in the storytelling process.
Right.
They become eager to uncover those layers beneath the surface.
It's like the difference between being handed a completed puzzle versus having that satisfaction of putting it together piece by piece.
Exactly.
Speaking of over-the-top writing, the source also tackles those never-ending descriptions that leave you wondering if the author swallowed a thesaurus.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
We've all encountered them, right? Those descriptions where the author spends 3 paragraphs detailing the exact shade of rust on a doorknob.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I get it, you're very observant, but can we please move on with the story?
It's like they're trying to make the reader jealous of their vocabulary or something.
Oh, wait.
But what they don't realize is that clarity, precision, those are much more valuable than just stringing together a bunch of flowery adjectives.
So true.
Instead of bombarding the reader with this avalanche of details, effective writing uses description strategically
Okay.
to evoke a very specific mood or atmosphere, maybe even a sensory experience.
So it's about choosing those details carefully
Exactly.
and then letting the reader sort of fill in some of those blanks with their own imagination.
Exactly. It's so much more powerful that way.
And speaking of things that can make writing fall flat, the source also calls out the danger of cliches.
Ugh, cliches, yes.
Those tired phrases that we've all heard a million times.
Right. Like nails on a chalkboard.
Oh, there you go. A cliche.
I know. See, I can't even help myself.
But the article doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers a pretty brilliant solution. And that's show, don't tell.
Oh, yes. The golden rule of storytelling.
Instead of saying, the detective was clever,
Right.
describe her meticulously analyzing a crime scene, noticing the tiniest little details that everyone else misses.
Yes, because then we get it. We understand.
We get it, she's clever. Now show us her brilliance in action.
Exactly. Because when you engage the reader's imagination through vivid descriptions, through actions,
Yeah,
it creates a far more immersive, a far more memorable experience.
for sure. And while we're on the topic of engaging the reader, the source delves into this tricky territory of dialogue. Specifically, how to avoid those painful moments when characters basically sound like they're reading from a script
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
instead of, having an actual genuine conversation.
It's so important to get that right because unnatural dialogue can really pull the reader out of the story.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
suddenly reminded that they're not actually experiencing something real. They're experiencing something that's manufactured.
Yeah, it kind of breaks that fourth wall a little bit.
Exactly.
It's so important for dialogue to feel authentic,
Right.
to reflect the way people actually speak, even if it's a little messy, even if it's imperfect.
Because that's how people actually talk.
Exactly.
And when you get that right, natural dialogue just adds this layer of realism and believability to your characters.
Okay.
And it makes them feel that much more relatable and engaging.
Absolutely. Now, all of this advice is fantastic for writers, obviously.
Right.
But I'm curious, is there anything in this source for those of us on the receiving end of the words?
You mean besides the guilty pleasure of just ripping apart terrible prose?
Well, yes, of course. Besides that.
Well, that's such a good question. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Because becoming more aware of these common writing pitfalls, even if you're not the one actually putting pen to paper, it makes you a much more discerning reader.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like you develop this keener eye for those subtle flaws, those
Yeah.
moments where, the writing could have been just a little bit more elevated.
Precisely. And as you become more attuned to those nuances,
Okay.
you'll find that your own writing, even just in everyday contexts, emails, reports,
Right.
it naturally becomes more polished. It becomes more effective.
Interesting. It's fascinating how analyzing bad writing can actually make us better communicators overall.
I know. It's like this secret superpower.
But the source doesn't start there.
No.
It goes on to this whole section about redrafting, which,
Yep.
let's be honest, can sometimes feel about as appealing as a root canal.
I feel you. It can be a little daunting.
Yeah.
But this source, it reframes redrafting as this essential part of the creative process,
Okay.
not just this, tedious chore that has to be endured.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these reframed, redrafting revelations.
Well, first of all, they really emphasize the importance of taking a break after you finish that first draft.
Okay.
Just stepping away from your work, even for a short period,
Yeah.
allows you to see it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
You get a clearer perspective.
It's like when you've been staring at a word for too long.
Right.
It just starts to lose all meaning.
Yes.
You need that distance to see it clearly again. Yeah, giving your writing that breathing room, I think, can make all the difference.
It really can.
But taking a break, that's just the first step, right?
Yeah.
What other redrafting gems does this source reveal?
Well, one technique they highlight is reading your work aloud,
Okay.
preferably to an audience.
Okay.
Even if it's just, your pet goldfish.
Okay, I have to admit, I've tried the goldfish thing.
Yeah.
Surprisingly unhelpful. They just stare at you with those blank, judgmental eyes.
Maybe skip the goldfish.
Yeah.
But the point is that when you hear your words spoken aloud, it helps you catch those awkward phrases, those clunky sentences, those sections where the rhythm just feels off.
Yeah.
It's like giving your writing a test drive
Okay.
before you, release it into the wild.
Makes total sense. And speaking of releasing it into the wild, the source also emphasizes the value of feedback.
Oh, absolutely.
But not just any feedback. They really stress the importance of, finding readers who are going to give you honest, constructive criticism.
Yes, because finding those trusted readers who can offer insightful feedback, that's crucial. They can help you see those blind spots in your own work.
Right.
Maybe challenge some of your assumptions.
Okay.
And ultimately just elevate your writing to a whole new level.
It's like having a writing coach in your corner,
Yeah.
Someone who believes in your potential, but they're not afraid to, give you a little nudge in the right direction.
Exactly. And on that note, the source also delves into the practical side of revisions, and they break it down into two distinct stages, macro and micro.
Okay, break those down for me. Macro revisions versus micro revisions. What's the difference?
So macro revisions, those are the big picture edits.
Okay.
It's about looking at the overall structure of your work, the flow of your ideas, the strength of your arguments.
Gotcha.
You're asking yourself questions like, am I effectively communicating my message?
Okay.
Is there a clear and logical progression?
Yeah.
those are the things you're thinking about.
So it's like making sure the foundation of your writing is solid before you even start, like, hanging pictures on the wall.
Precisely. And once you're confident in that overall structure, that's when you can move on to those micro revisions.
Okay.
And that's where you fine-tune your sentences, sharpen your word choice, just eliminate any unnecessary clutter.
The polishing stage.
Exactly.
Make every sentence shine.
There we go.
But the source also mentions something kind of ominous sounding. Killing your darlings.
Ah, yes.
Which is a little scary to think about.
It could be a painful process, I'll admit, but killing your darlings basically means being willing to cut even your favorite parts of your work.
Wow.
Maybe it's a really clever line that you came up with.
Yeah.
Maybe it's this beautiful description, but if it doesn't serve the overall purpose of the piece,
Right.
it's got to go.
So it's about being, ruthless, I guess, in service of the story, even if it means sacrificing some of those phrases that you absolutely love.
Because sometimes letting go of those darlings can actually make space for something even more powerful to emerge.
That's a good point. It's kind of freeing in a way, if you think about it.
It really is.
Well, this deep dive into bad writing, I've got to say, it's been incredibly insightful. We've learned how to identify common writing traps,
Yes.
how to avoid them in our own work,
Yes.
and even how to, approach revisions with a fresh perspective.
It's all connected.
It really is.
It's been so much fun exploring the power of language
Yes.
and how important it is to really choose our words carefully. And that's true whether we're writing a novel or just a simple email.
So true. Well, for those of you listening, we'd love to keep this conversation going. Head over to social media. Tell us about your biggest writing pet peeves. Or maybe, share those moments of writing brilliance that you just have to tell someone about.
And as you go about your day, think about how, having a deeper understanding of these writing techniques might influence your own communication,
Yeah.
even in really subtle ways. Could being just a little more intentional make your message that much more impactful?
That is a fantastic question and something for all of us to ponder. Until next time.